So if so let's take jokes. Okay, it's what we previously have identified as kind of the greatest genre of literature based on how strong the mind state changes when you engage with it, right? And just to recap, you go from uh, nothing to asking a question to then being asked to revert your brain back to the original um, thing that was mentioned or you were asking about or you were asked about, but in a way that you didn't intend it, you didn't predict, right? It was not predictable. Then the brain rewards you with the most pleasurable feeling ever in the universe, which is a laugh, right? Now, jokes are not micro. Now, I'm sorry to use the words micro or macro. I promise I'll find new words that speak to exactly what I'm trying to say. But mind reading, jokes aren't macro. It's not mind reading. It's not attributing mental states based on physical cues. It's not why you art. It's not why you read. It's not what draws you in. It's one of the things you learn from reading, the switching of the mental states. Uh, Jokes are sort of like that. They're pseudo macro. But then we have um, another thing, and it's kind of jokes, but it's kind of that same thing. It definitely plays with the going and then on the unexpected thing happening, kind of, and that is if I'm writing a novel and um, let's say I have three characters, and I tell you how these three characters met. All the three characters read the same book, and then the way they interacted with the book, maybe a couple paragraphs or maybe a couple pages or a chapter, each one is different. And I just tell you how they interacted with the book. This one found the book in this way, and they learned to like it in this amount of time, and whatever. It could, I don't want to write it right now, but yeah, and each one would be different, and then they all be together, and they form a close bond. Okay. What you're being set up there is a macro instance of Babe Ruthing, right? Of you're being presented with people, characters. This in this instance, explicit characters, but this can also work for proxy characters if we're talking about music or painting. Uh, but you're being set up with characters, and you're being told that something's going to happen to these characters because they're in the story, right? So it's implied. So that's your opportunity to guess. You're getting seeded information, like what could happen with these things. So you create stories in your head and stuff. And the creation process is okay. I mean, that's whatever. I guess it's good to practice the creation process. What's really good is when you get to check your work against the authors, against what really happens, right? So you might say, I think these people are gonna have a troublesome relationship, and these people are gonna hang out, based on how they each interacted with the book, based on their personalities. And so it's not the micro, it's not attributing mental states, but it is a macro, but it's almost not macro in the sense that it's impossible for it to draw you out of the story. That's not true. It is. You could definitely sit there and think. Yeah, it's definitely macro. As you ideally you would sit there and think, if this was a very explicit thing, you would sit there and think about um, what your guesses for each character were, and more importantly, what your guesses for the relationship of each character was. And but really, right, it happens most of the time, not so explicitly. At least with most people, I'm sure there are some readers out there, even probably some who are watching this video, who do sit down and explicitly think about, like, okay, what do I think is going to happen with this stuff? If you do, good job. That's great. That's good brain stuff. But the real thing is checking your work, seeing it, and then, you know, making connections of where you were different from what the cat. I'll just say, I like to leave off of authorial intent. Is everyone is super lazy, and then they just have conversations about authorial intent, or whether that actually exists or not. That's a big conversation, whether it's relevant or not. I guess I'm falling on the side of not relevant, but I'm taking a more of a skirting the issue just so we can get all the other things around it. So I'll say, like, what these characters really did. And I really mean what the author, in a way, I mean what the author wrote them to. But that disregards the instances of micro that I like to talk about. So this is wine, by the way. I guess there's no point in saying that this is wine, because it's not like I can make you listen more by telling you that my ideas are going to be less good because I'm drinking wine, and I'm kind of hushed because the baby's sleeping, and I'm not being funny, obviously, so there's no really advantage for me telling you that this is wine. I must feel bad from trailing off. I'm doing more trailing. The real reason is not even the wine. It's that I'm just creating this idea as I go, which is a much more nobler thing. I should just say that next time. Then people will think I'm cool. So we have the instance of the joke as a very intense macro, but we also have this instance of guessing the narrative and then checking your guesses as an extremely important, healthy brain exercise that you engage in when you are involved in an art instance, an art event.